She had a 2.9% margin. And I think we worked with her maybe 4 or 5 years, something like that. Now, she was a really strong operator too. She elevated to number two. She's traction disciple. And it was so cool to see. We got her up to 6 million. She ended up with a 20% margin, and then she had a nice little 8-figure exit with no debt. So it's super empowering and cool to see when people grow in that financial literacy and then also take the advice. And you can tell someone, I can tell someone what they need to do all day long, but unless you're going to execute on it, it doesn't really matter.
Are you tired of working more for less profits in your home service business? What if I could show you $100,000 in hidden annual profits in your business in less than 3 minutes? Would you be interested? And not only show you where, but how to create that 100K in 6 months or less without additional advertising or marketing spend guaranteed. Just go to sharpenthespearcoaching.com to see how truly simple it is. That's sharpenthespearcoaching.com. Do it now. And we are back on STS Sharpen the Spear podcast with another incredible guest. I am excited for this conversation because we've kind of already had one, and it was lengthy and it was awesome. So now we're gonna actually record it. It's too bad we didn't, but hey, Brian Lang joins us, and Brian, no one knows Brian better than Brian. So Brian, backstory, bring us up to speed, and we are going to tear into it after that.
All right. Well, we'll see if we can do as well with this one as we did with the last. So, all right. I'm Brian Lang. Run a company called Upside CFO. Ultimately, we work with business owners. They're mostly high-income founders, and they're doing well on paper. But, they're still flying blind a little bit financially. So we're kind of numbers people, just as an FYI. And most of them, they have businesses, but that income, it's just missing some stuff. So most of them, 3 million, 30 million in revenue, and they all kind of have a couple common symptoms. They're overpaying on taxes. Their books usually are pretty messy, to be honest. And then no one's really thinking strategically. So that's kind of where we come in. We've gotten really good the last several years, quite frankly, at cleaning up chaos. And then just background on me, I won't bore you too much about corporate background, but I worked at the 5th largest firm, CPA, consulting, all that fun stuff for a pretty long time. I left before I was senior manager. And then I worked out in Aspen 2 years, which, man, I learned a ton. Worked very closely with a group of Aspen folks, right? Like they were 300 million to 2 billion net worth. And if I had to redo it, I probably would have learned even more than I did. I was like 30 at the time. But learned so much from those guys, and I brought a lot of that back into what we do now. And ultimately, now I spend time helping business owners avoid mistakes I've made, other business owners we work with have made, and really bring some of that Aspen mindset to, quite frankly, the small business owner. And a lot of the work we do at Upside, it centers around what I call like the working wealthy mindset. And when I say working wealthy, that doesn't mean we're rolling around on like private jets and trying to buy yachts and stuff. It's ultimately, to me, it's about living life with more control, leverage, and freedom. And then just personally for me, I live in my favorite city in the United States, Austin, Texas. I love it down here. I've been here my whole adult life. I have a super cool wife, 3 kids. I have no problem saying it. I am fringing on being kind of psycho sports dad. My kids are 11, 8, and 6.
No, who's your coach?
I'm one of those. And they're all really good athletes. And I think my middle one, he's only 8, but I can already tell he's going to be top tier. Whenever we can, we built a house out in Colorado several years ago. So we spend out time in Colorado as much as possible. We're in that southwest corner. In Colorado, we do the opposite of snowbirding. We get the hell out of Texas to beat the heat during the summer. And then I'm a Midwesterner. That's where my roots are. I was born and raised in St. Louis, lived there, from birth till post-college, then moved down here. While I grew up in the city, mom and dad were farmers growing up. So we also have the family farm in like rural southeast Missouri. And that's a cool place. We spend a lot of time up there. It has the OGs who came over from Germany. They're buried on the property. They came over in 1831. Very, very cool place with lots of history. And then I'd say just kind of random nugget on me. I am very, very glad I chose the path I did professionally. Like, man, I love working in the small business space. I wasn't sure when I did it what it was going to look like. But I mean, we have such awesome clients and you can truly make an impact. I'm a little anti big corporate, so I love what I'm doing right
And I like that. And that's why we're aligned. And here, anytime to me, the small business, your 3 to 30 million range is some I deal in as well. And I love it because the value you bring to these businesses, and we talk about this a lot on this podcast, and it's great to talk about stuff, but when you get into not necessarily the weeds, but when you really understand the value, it's really trying to understand the value of bringing in experts such as yourself to really make a difference. Because again, most of us as entrepreneurs can hustle, we can sell, right? We get things done. That's like who we are.
Right.
And I will give you my own. I never looked at numbers. My first 20 years was just, I made money. I made a good amount of money, made cool stuff, but I was ill-trained as a child.
You're probably chasing revenue like everyone else does, right?
Yeah, I was.
Sins, I always say.
Yeah, it is the wrong scorecard. I preach that now all the time. But yeah, you're right. So, and it's funny how you can keep going and neglect those things. And then like say you get 20 years in, you get 15 years in, you're 10 years, whatever it is. And all of a sudden, if you do, you bring in someone like you, Brian, you bring them in and all of a sudden you start realizing all this profit you could have, this money you could keep. You're not even doing more. You're just keeping more. And that's a huge takeaway for people. Like because I do the same thing, right? We show people what's inside. You're leaving all this stuff inside your business. You're not exploiting it. And I mean that in a positive way. You're not exploiting your potential to its fullest, right?
Yep. Yeah, and I think ultimately there, you said it took you 20 years to have numbers. I like to just say this out loud because I feel like a lot of people, business owners you talk to, they kind of have shame around it, and it's like, I know I'm supposed to be tracking this, but I'm not. I mean, I'm no different than the shoe peddler back in the day. They make shoes for everyone. It took me a long time to look at my own numbers. We were too busy doing it for other people. So guess when we were, in grow and scale mode, guess who got neglected? Our numbers did. And no different than anyone else, once we started looking at our numbers from both a strategy and, profitability, all that, we took a leap. And then we took another big leap. You know how people always say, hey, you're supposed to track stuff weekly. We all know that, right? We're really good at telling other people or advising other people, I should say, what to track. When it comes internally and you're in your own stuff, it's like, well, what the hell should we track weekly? So we had a couple years ago where we brought in a really strong number 2, hired some ops consultants, and that was a game changer internally for us. And then obviously it's what we do for a living. It's cool to see people overall, once they start, because some people don't know anything about finances, right? They don't have that financial literacy yet. So a lot of times we got to bring them from here to here. And then, some of these clients where we're working with over a long period of time, several years, it's cool to see them kind of stair step their way up. Like I remember actually it was our very first client. She started off typical small business owner. She was doing well. She had like 3 million in revenue. Books were just so messy you couldn't even do a tax return. One of those. She had a 2.9% margin. And I think we worked with her maybe 4 or 5 years, something like that. Now, she was a really strong operator too. She elevated to number 2. She's traction disciple. And it was so cool to see. We got her up to 6 million. She ended up with a 20% margin. And then she had a nice little 8-figure exit with no debt. So it's super empowering and cool to see when people grow in that financial literacy and then also take the advice. And you can tell someone, I can tell someone what they need to do all day long, but unless you're going to execute on it, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, so true. That's the dilemma of coaching, consulting.
Yep.
It's
yeah.
like, I told you what to do and you didn't do it.
Right.
And you're wondering why it's not working well. You got to at least make an effort here. And some people, they'll do things and I get it. Where I was in my first business, I didn't take help from anybody.
Yeah.
And I had billionaires telling me what to do, and I'm thinking, what do they know?
Well, you also get what's interesting. I was talking to someone internally at our company the other day, and I think some of that also depends where you are in your business journey, right? Like I could say if you were speaking at something, and you're a speaker on XYZ topic, I might hear you speak 3 different times, maybe in year 2, maybe in year 5, and maybe in year 8 of my business. And I might take that exact same message and interpret it completely differently depending where I am. And I think that's something, a lot of times, like if I think of my own journey, you're frustrated, like, man, why didn't I do that years ago? Well, I might have not had the knowledge yet, or had the scars yet, or screwed up enough yet to care about that particular thing, whatever it may be. It could be sales, it could be finance, you name it. I think that's something a lot of people don't think through, and we're guilty of as like true entrepreneurs. You always kind of measure where your gap is. It's like, man, I feel like I should be up here. Should you? I mean, a lot of people have tuition payments where they got to learn their stuff to get up there.
Yeah, that's really good insight, Brian, because I think of that too. Like I should have been this. I'm like, there's no way I could have done that. I mean, I did this well, but like I was so in my own way. You know what I mean? So yeah, I didn't, and I was kind of done learning. I'm air quoting done learning, right? And that's a huge mistake. So you look back, and I guess that's the beauty of hindsight, right? You look back and see where you stalled yourself out, right? So and I think what you just said, just that evaluation of where you're at, that's an important thing to do. I think we all as entrepreneurs, regardless of what we do, is take that time to do a self-evaluation. Mm-hmm. Well, where am I now? And then why am I here? I thought I'd be here, and there's all the different strategic visions and planning and all the things, but like 9.5 times out of 10, we're our worst enemy, the owner, right? We're the roadblock. We're the reason why we're stalled out because, we're holding on too tight or whatever the deal is. So from what you do, I just love the aspect when you come in because you do something. And I found this regardless of the industry, right? Now we focus primarily construction, trades, things like that. But even when I work at other businesses, realtors, whatever it is, you see this I don't want to call it a fear, this aversion to numbers. Mm-hmm. It's an aversion. Like it's, okay, the checks are clearing. I made payroll. That's my number knowledge, right? I get it. I know what I need, stuff like that. So it's really amazing when you bring in that person like you, and they start to do it, and you start to see it. Because I had to go through all this. I had to learn on. All of a sudden, I'm like, oh, this just makes so much sense. But I definitely, like you said, I was not there to learn it back then. Mm-hmm. Would never worked, right? I wasn't open to that. But when I see it now, and I help with the business with it, that's like you said with one woman with the big 8-figure exit and all that stuff. When someone gets the light bulb, and it goes off and they see what someone can bring to them like you do, and you open it up and then it's simple to understand, right? And you show them you do it. It changes not just the trajectory of your business, but I think it is a life changer, because again, we're working hard. We bust our hump. We got that. Work ethic's not an issue. Okay. With most entrepreneurs, that's not an issue. The issue is these things, these number things, what to do with it, how to keep more and stuff like that. Is that what you see primarily?
Yeah, for sure. And man, I can pack a lot of stuff there that you unpack a lot of stuff you just said there. So, I'll admit I'm a little tax number biased, right? It's my background, it's my trade. I think that's a critical part. And you also mentioned on us as entrepreneurs and business owners getting in our own way. And man, we love to get in our own way, whether it's headspace, lack of delegation, lack of systems, whatever it is. And that's one thing I was talking, actually, that person I mentioned who had the exit, I don't know, she exited 2 years ago. We talk probably once a quarter, 2 or 3 times a year, whatever it is. She's starting to look to be on some boards, and she knows, I touch a lot of businesses. We're pretty active in blue collar space, also do a lot of high-end realtors. And we're just kind of talking about, she was asking me, she's like, what are you seeing out there? Like what is the number one issue in small business? I was like, well, I'd love to say, it was numbers. I think that's high. It's what we do for a living. But I'm like, I actually don't think that's what it is. I was like, it's kind of what you said, where we get in our own way. And, I'm talking to myself here. I'm preaching to me too. So don't come up as holier than thou when I say this. But I was like, we run really poor businesses from an operating perspective frequently. And what I mean by that is, those of you listening out there, like, really dial in and be honest. Do you have strategy? And strategy is not, hey, I'm at $2 million. we're going to be at 2.4 million next year, 20% organic growth. That is not strategy. That is just saying, hey, I think I'm going to grow by 20%, which I'd say probably 90% of business owners, that's how they function. That's fine if that's your goal, but what are the 5 or 7 or 27 steps that help you get there? You know, and that kind of goes into ABC priorities, as I call them. One of the biggest issues, and I've had a lot of this myself, is you don't know what to prioritize. We wear a million hats. I don't know anything about marketing. I learned how to do marketing. I have to learn how to do sales. I'm like, oh, sales processes are a real thing? I just assumed everyone will want my services. I can save you $100K a year in taxes. Like, who wouldn't want to pick us? So, I mean, you have to learn so many different skill sets. And until you understand how to truly prioritize and build systems, it's amazing how some people get to where they are with no, like we have a blue collar business right now. They're 15 million in revenue. They're bringing husband wife team. They're bringing home about 2 million a year profit. And I mean, and I told them when we were going through our assessment, it's like, your books aren't even good enough to run a lemonade stand, you know, like couldn't get a tax return or any of that done. And it'll be interesting to see. We started working with them in November, saved them over 300K a year in taxes. So now they had plenty of money anyway, but now they even have even more firepower, right?
Right.
And it'll be interesting to see. It's like, you guys built this with just, quite frankly, being good at your craft and you know what you said, hustle. Like, they're good at sales. They work. They work so hard. And when they actually get some systems in place, it'll be really interesting to see what is possible. So
yeah, it is. That's one of my primary things, was really, you come in, and again, in the trades and service industry, when I get in, I wrote my book because the patterns are all the same. Every business,
yep.
As we like to say, they do all the right, wrong things, you know, for me to help them. So I help them, right? So we see it, but it's just, and I did them. So I'm like, it's just, well, okay, good. I don't feel quite as stupid because everybody else does it, but I'm in the herd of, you know, knuckleheads. Okay, who just know how to work hard, okay, and make some money. So it's, I love to hear that. Like, and like you said, you put 300K on their profit line. Okay, you saved that money, giving it to who knows who, right? And it doesn't matter how much you're making, right? Whether, hey, it's all relevant, because you can do, it's more fuel, it's more ammo. Right. And just, I'd rather be the one delegating where that money goes, not the government. Right. So if I can keep it,
that's our one uniter, right? Black, white, Democrat, Republican.
That's right.
No one really likes to give that. I call it tipping the IRS. No, I mean, that is a hard check to send. And just kind of on a random tangent, I think this is a good piece of information for those out there. You know, we just finished tax season, right? And we always have a couple people every year where we may pick up some tax plans later in the year, or we're picking up new clients now. You know, like we picked someone up in February, for example, and we do their tax plan for 2025. And one gentleman in particular, pretty nice business. I can't remember off the top of my head what we were going to save him. I know it was 6 figures. I think it was like 150 to 225. And we're working with his outsourced CFO. And, you know, like I said, we just got engaged. It was mid-February. And I was like, hey, there's really not much we can do retroactively. And he had made good money before, but he really took a big jump this year. Previous years, he always had kind of equipment purchases and stuff to knock that tax bill down. So this was his first year where, you know, it's a double-edged sword. It's like they see that number on paper and it's, you know, you kind of have like, I made it. Like, I've been doing this a long time. Like, I made over whatever his was, I think 1.5 million. You know, and you're like, damn, like, I pay more in taxes than people make in a year. But then you got to write that check. You know, and it is such a sting and a defeat. You know, and then it's interesting in our world, people kind of get mad at us. You know, like I had 2 people this year where they were new clients, and like they were, one of them, her and I just jive real well. We've been getting along. She's like, I literally wanted to kill you guys last Friday. And I was like, oh, I know. I could read it in your email tone. So we kind of had to talk through what happened, explain to her. But I mean, we just got engaged, you know, like I can't control what happened in the prior year. So that's always an interesting thing we see, where it's like they first make that big jump and then you just get like a gut punch, you know? So It's like,
Yeah,
welcome to the working wealthy, folks. Now write
yeah,
your $300 or $500,000 check.
yeah, it's hard. It's that shoot the messenger kind of thing. Like I have to tell people too, even my work, I was like, well, I didn't create the problem. I'm just here to solve it. So the problem is already there. We have to, and that's why what's important. One of the other things that you do from a strategy standpoint is, again, you're looking forward. It's 2025. You're looking at 2026. Like, what are we doing? What are we doing for this year? Yeah, but what about going forward?
Yep.
Because there's your basic accounting. That's a compliance issue. Got to make sure we, check all the whatever, dot I's, cross T's, put the numbers in the right places, put the comma in the right place, and all that. But really it's like, what do we do going forward? How do we build this into the system? And this is what's unique is it's as simple as how do we keep more of what we make? What does that look like? There is strategies. There's a lot of things. Like you said, you have to be a strategic thinker in this, just like you should be in your business. Like you said about, hey, we're just going to grow 20%. Yeah, that's just like, that's wishing. Okay. It's wishing. I mean, and
I used
why
to do
would
that.
you?
Those used to be my
Right.
goals. It's like, we're going to grow 30% this year. If someone ever asked me how, it'd be like, just start. Grit and
was worse.
determination.
I was worse, Brian. I'd say, I just asked my wife, how much you need? And I go make more. I just go make more. 10 grand. I'll go make 10 grand. Okay. Make 10 grand. It's just, I mean, I was not quite that bad, but maybe it was kind of close. Okay.
Judgment,
So
man.
I needed the right motivation. Okay. So, but I think when people wrap their head around this, and I spend a lot of time talking about this because, again, from personal experience and then watching all those other businesses, it's just, there's so much sitting there, okay, that they can't tap into. They're leaving or giving away, unnecessarily. And that, I want this to be like the awareness aspect of this, right? It's like today, once you need to feel that. Like it's got to hurt. You got to realize, like, I've been doing this for 10 years and you wish you just had what you didn't get, what you left, right? Like you gave away, or in my case, I'd say if I just had what I lost, okay, I'd be set, right? So we don't want you to experience that. But if you have to this point, it's really about flipping that and the importance of bringing it, because you're not going to do it on your own. And this is no hardcore sales coaching. I'm just saying that you have to accept the fact this is not your wheelhouse.
No, and
Okay.
I mean, I know from experience, I didn't get my ops together until I wrote the check. Like,
That's it.
I
Right?
knew exactly what I was going to do. And I'll never forget, I had a client. I want to do a good job for our clients, right? We want to provide value. And I'll never forget this conversation. It was just very eye-opening to me. This was several years ago. I'm 43 right now. I was probably like mid-30s at the time. Chris, business owner, they were probably 50. They had a lot of years on me, right? And they had kind of built a business. We got them from here to here, and they were doing really well. And finally, I asked them. It was the operator and their number two worked very closely with them. And I just was like, I feel like you guys kind of got this on autopilot, to be honest. Am I really providing you any value? Is more or less what I asked them. And I'll never forget the response. They more or less said, our accounting was a disaster till you guys took over. And don't forget, you're still monitoring over our internal account. So like the accounting's good. And, they said, you did take us from here to here. And their response was, if we write this check for our monthly accountability call and we're still growing at this profit margin, we're getting a huge ROI on that. And, at that point in my life, where I was as a business owner, I wasn't necessarily thinking through like ROI, accountability. Sometimes I do it. Like, I write a check, so I do it. If I don't pay it, I'm not going to do it. It's just me personally. Not everyone operates that. I'm not saying that's the right way, but I mean, I think it's realistic a lot of times.
Well, it's that, when you pay attention. That's how it is. And come on, if anyone here, anything you've done, regardless of the number, how much, when you pay for something, you get it.
Yeah.
You go pick it up, you use it, unless it's Planet Fitness, $10 a month, then you never go. Okay. So that's the business you want. Just people giving you money and never showing up. Okay. So because they know Monday they're going to start and they never do. But it is true. It's like, it's that investment. It's a personal investment, right? It's an investment in themselves growing or their business growing. Like they said, we have to understand ROI on that kind of stuff, what you're bringing to the table. I do it with my clients, right? I show them the ROI This is what it'll cost me to coach you. Here's your increased profit. Pretty good trade-off? Yeah, rinse and repeat. Let's do that. Let's do that all the time, okay? As long as you can do that, that's what it's about, and your realization of that is really good, because I think sometimes I was talking with another guy who does supply chain stuff, and they're helping these businesses and they're fixing things, but we were talking about pricing, basing price, like how much he charges. They go, well, you're basing yours just on what you're fixing, like right now, but the profit increase over the next 5 years, 10 years is like 20 times that. Okay, so you have to value yourself on what you're bringing them. This isn't a temporary fix. So like your guys, if you go from here to there, if you increase by 25, 30% in your business, okay, and you're growing, well, that doesn't go away the following year because of systems, processes, knowing your numbers, keeping more tax. That's a great thing. So there's massive value in that. Again,
and
that's why numbers are important.
It's the same theory as compounding interest on investments, right? The more I get at a younger age, the higher it will grow when I'm older, right? So if you make that investment now, coaching, CFOs, whatever it is, and I realize, I'm a small business too. We're watching our dollars. Like, I understand that. And then also, quite frankly, people have to watch their time, which is a separate tangent I could get into for quite a long discussion there. I'm a member of EO Entrepreneur Organization, and when I was in the accelerator program, we have an awesome dude who taught quarterlies. I think he came here from Venezuela, if I remember. Serial entrepreneur. He was on his third business when he was teaching us. And just say he started his first one in like 2000, or maybe late 90s, doesn't matter. And he always said, hey, it took me forever to get 10 million, right? His next one, he got 10 million, a couple years. That third one, he's like, man, I don't know how to run a business now. I got there almost instantaneous. When he's like, I'm not any smarter. I just have more wisdom. I know what it takes to run a business. And one thing he always said, which, maybe I liked as a service provider, but it is a fair point. He's like, guys, you have to keep in mind, we're in 2025 right now. He's like, really sit back and think of how fortunate you are. If you started a business in the late 90s and you wanted to hire Brian, you had to bring him full time. There was no fractional. He's like, you can do fractional with everything now. Marketing, admins, CFO, accounting. And I mean, that. Think of how much that benefits, where you don't have to bring in a $100,000 accountant. You can get someone to do the basic bookkeeping, which everyone listening out there, please don't skimp on that. It is boring as hell. I always say it's like insurance. But bookkeeping is like the number one business fundamental needed out there, period. Bad books, bad data, bad decisions. So you can outsource your bookkeeping and then work your way up. And what I thought was so fascinating that he did was, basically he hires, and I don't want to share his information. He's a very successful dude, but he hires from the bottom up. So when he starts a business, that management rung up here, it's all outsourced. You might be a part-time whatever. I might be the part-time CFO. And he's like, I get so much value. I can pay you guys 3, 5, 8, 10K a month, whatever your fee is, where to have you full-time, he's like, Brian, what's full-time CFO? I'm like, big corp, you're paying at least 250 and plus overhead bonuses. I was like, I would not work in corporate for less than 400K, like, period, right?
Right.
So you get so much leverage now compared to what you do, where you still got to learn the stuff, but you can ultimately scale a lot more efficiently than you could 20 years ago.
Yeah, it's so powerful. I mean, these last few years, I'd say the last 5 years at least, to see this evolution, probably since 2017 maybe, just really seeing, like you said, moving into the fractional stuff on the C-suite. Mm-hmm. You got your marketers, you got your Fiverr guys, you got Upwork, you got stuff like that. But now it's gone to that level now where you're doing high operations at I like the temporary aspect too, because, anytime you cut someone loose, that's a mess in itself.
Yep.
But when they have a time to package, 3 months, 6 months, whatever, there's an end. Like, and it may get renewed. You may go to the next thing, but at least you can go, there's a higher level, to me, there's a higher level of accountability. Would you agree?
Oh, yeah. And another thing I would say, just, being on the receiving end of some of this and working with people too, where we outgrow them, don't be weird about communicating with your service providers what you're truly looking for, right? Like we had a consultant we brought in and, they were kind of fishing at the renewal stuff. Whatever, we worked with them maybe three, and they were more higher ticket group. I think we worked with them 3 or 4 months, and I was like, hey guys, I'm gonna be transparent with you. I'm about 95% certain we will not renew. I would be shocked if I don't work with you again in the future, but you guys got us from here to here pretty quickly. We have to digest some of that, put it into action, and I have a feeling when we're at our next bump, if you guys want to work with us, we're going to be coming back. That happens frequently in the space, and I think the better you can communicate that, just the crisper relationships are, don't burn bridges. And that's ultimately what we want to see. Like, now this sucked because it was early on in my career where we were really getting, I'll never forget, talk about feeling like a fraud or imposter syndrome. I was on a call, a pretty big GC, and they're just doing well. We had worked with them maybe a year and a half, 2, like our company was not old at all. We did not have many clients. We, were kind of grabbing project revenue whenever we could, keep the lights on. And then I had a little small stream of monthly recurring. I was heading to Aspen for a 2-week trip, literally. And like the next day had a call with this client and they were talking about where they are. They did not say it directly. And I was just like, man, we're going to get turned. They outgrew us. They got to bring someone in full time. And, I'll never forget. I felt like I could have cried, man. Like I walked downstairs with my wife and I'm like, well, we're about to go to Aspen 2 weeks and our largest client's about to fire us. We have $4,000 a month of recurring revenue right now after that. And we have 2 kids. I was like, this makes sense. Had one of those moments. But, like ultimately that's what your service provider's wanting to do. Like a lot of our clients, we might start at the top and kind of phase ourselves out. If we phase ourselves out, like awesome, you guys hit it. And eventually at some point, you probably will need to bring in that controller CFO hybrid. So that's part of the game. And like you said, I just feel like there's a lot more accountability when you're doing a transaction with someone. This is what they do for a living. This is their goal. And then you don't have to have a management piece too, which is nice.
Yeah, I think I see that. And it's a matter of, you got to hunt. You eat what you kill, right? Mm-hmm. That old sales saying, like that's what we do. So it also from your aspect, if you're like when I had my roofing business, we use all subcontractors, and people would say, "Oh, you just use subcontractors." I said, "Well, do you know why?" Because I could actually hold them at a higher level of accountability than I can the in-house staff. And they're like, "What?" I go, "Yeah, I feed their family. I know you think inside do, but they're employees. There's a different relationship. But these guys, I can have multiples. I can get more work done. And if they don't do it the way I prescribe, they're out."
Yep.
That cash flow disappears. And when they're doing a roof a day for me, okay, that's keeping them pretty darn busy. Mm-hmm. Right. So I used to have to sell. I would tell them the benefits of subcontracting, which now I pass on along to my clients. Right. Same reason. Why do you need that in-house? Why do you need that consistent payroll? You don't need that. That is just a burden on the business. Same principle, right? So we understand now those guys are going to perform for me. I mean, if I give them one job a month, they're not going to care about me.
Right.
But when you get them regular, they'll do whatever you want.
All right.
You got an emergency deal, move it up. They'll jump through hoops for you.
Yeah, and they're just becoming an extension of your team. And I'm not going to pretend I'm some great prognosticator, right? But I mean, I was early in with these fractional services, and I kind of saw where the market was going. And like I said, my age, and especially with the baby boomer awareness, right? I mean, the amount of businesses going away are a ton, blah, blah, blah. And if I talk about my space in particular, let's talk CPAs only. 75% of CPAs are at retirement age right now. So in theory, you could lose 75% of the workforce right now if they said, hey, I'm done. So, I mean, I think it was pretty obvious where this was going, where I don't even think we're in the, up here yet. We still got a long way to go to get to the top. You are going to see so many more fractional people in the next 5 to 10 years. I mean, that is where it's going. And then I think if I was in my 50s or 60s, it's like, why would I not do this?
Right.
You don't want the day-to-day grind anymore. You can pick who you work with. If you're good at your craft, exactly what you said on the subs, I can feed people, and then they don't have to mess around with the sales and marketing component. They just get to do what they're good at, and they're not grinding anymore. In our space, some of these people work 20 hours a week and make their six figures, and it's like, hey, then I don't have to work another 5 years and keep my nose at the grindstone. Then I get a retirement. And they're also scared of being bored when they retire. So, I mean, there's so many benefits in this system, in my humble opinion. I think it's here to stay.
Yeah, I agree with you. I love it. I just think there's so much more flexibility now, in all aspects of business. It's a different animal now, and it didn't happen overnight. But
Correct.
if you're staying current on this, like you can be an early adopter in this, grow, get in there, and now you're at the point where you can select your clients, right? That's the difference of being an early adopter, where you're hoping like you didn't want to lose that one big one because with Aspen's no good. But now you get to select who you work for. You've really honed an ICP, an ideal client profile. You understand who you want to work for. You know how you can serve them the best, right? You can get in. You've got proven track record. And this just goes to all business in general. You got to start somewhere, but you got to stay in the game, watch how it evolves, helping as many people as you can, bring in the best results. And that's business. But now we're understanding the arena we're playing in. Right.
And one thing, I'm sorry, a little bit of a tangent here, but you said where you have to start somewhere. This is, and Richard, you're going to find out I have ADD brain. So if you ever need to loop me back in, feel free to recenter me, my man. But you said you got to start somewhere. So that makes me think, because a lot of times, people will ask us, like, am I too small for tax planning? When do I bring XYZ provider in, right? And obviously from an external marketing message, most of the clients we work with, they're good income earners. They make $755 million take-home pay, right? Call them the working wealthy, as I mentioned before. And from a marketing standpoint, we get to share big, sexy wins when someone's making $2 million. I would argue, though, I'll never forget, the only reason I have a tax practice, I did not do CPA work in big corporate. I've been a CPA forever. I think it was 14 or 15 was my first year of being a solo consultant, and I started making good money where those tax bills were starting to sting a little bit. And I'm just a learning dork. So I figured out some gray-haired people who taught me a lot about tax. And I was trying to make a YouTube video back in the day on something, and I was meeting with my CPA, and we're whiteboarding this out. And I basically was like, looked at him, I'll never forget. I was like, why? And I dropped a nice little 4-letter expletive. Are we not doing this? I was like, dude, you're charging me $1,000 a month. This one thing alone saved me. And I still have my 3 checks I got as a refund from the U.S. Treasury. It's like $17,000+. One thing I think that's so important is people always kind of have like, hey, we're going to address this stuff once we get to 2 million in revenue or 3 million. I would argue if you're saving that extra 15 to 20 to 30K or squeezing more profit, it's almost more important on the front end, because that's when you really need all that money. When you're already doing 7 million in revenue, of course we want to be as profitable as we can and keep as much as we can in our own pockets, but you got more firepower to work with at that point. Like those growing stages, if you can become efficient then, never put pen to paper, but I bet your upward to the right trajectory would be a lot quicker than someone who doesn't do that until they hit 3 million in revenue or whatever it is.
And the reality, Brian, is they're not going to do it at 3 million either. Okay.
There's usually a pain point that happens when it's finally like, I got to do it now. I can't stand it.
Again, and just so you're saying, like with fractional CFOs, this podcast, any other business podcast in general, like you're hearing this now, you may be at 750,000 a year in your gross revenue and thinking, if I got to keep an extra 15,000, 20,000, like you said, like that's compounding. It will compound. Yeah. You can utilize that. Then your mindset and your action is all tied together early. This is what we do, right? We're about time compression. Mm-hmm. Guys like you and I could take 10 years and put it into 1.
Right.
Or less, right? And save you all those mistakes and bad decisions, things like that. And now you're creating more profit now early. Okay. And that's what you need to do, because there's all this money inside there. Once you can uncover that, you're not working harder. It is the literal working smarter, because you're bringing on someone who can uncover that stuff for you so that you're able to like, oh my, back in the day, an extra 15, 20,000.
Well, it was,
On the year that's huge, right? So you gotta keep, again, this is knowing numbers, understanding the value of it. Not in CPA, like, I'm just saying, like, understanding the power of it. You have to understand the power, whether you do it or someone else does it. Usually it's going to be someone else, but there's incredible power to that, to your growth and success
yeah,
success.
we had one a couple of years ago where, and I learned a lot of stuff from it internally, how important it is to market, which all business owners know. And then I don't know, how do you say it, almost like vote of confidence for we're good at what we do. So, the tax side is easy, Richard, right? Hey, we look at your stuff. I can save you X, Y, Z. There's no ambiguity or guesswork, right? I can save you 20K. I can save you 200K. And people like to come into that. I think the CFO side's a little trickier, where you're trying to explain to someone, hey, we can teach you how to use your numbers to make more money. A lot of people are like, okay, how? Right? Like they don't know what that means. And they almost feel like they're getting pitched. And then I also think right now where CFO world is, you can talk to 10 different CFOs and they kind of operate 10 different ways. So we had one the other year on the CFO side. They were oil and gas type stuff out in West Texas. I'm here in Austin. And they were 11 million a year in revenue. And we worked with them literally 1 year. And you could tell just, nothing was bad at the company. But this is what I just say, kind of bleeding money on the back end. Like this is the unsexy stuff that a lot of people don't talk about. And, someone like you, I know you see this stuff, right? Eventually when that back end gets fixed, and what I mean by that is, maybe efficiency, processes, just tweaking the numbers a little bit so you, the business owner, understand them. We worked with them 12 months, and I already knew on the front end, I had a hunch. It was these three things. So we switched the chart of accounts. If you guys out there, I'm talking accounting jargon here. So that's basically just how stuff shows up on your P&L, like where do things show? And they were essentially similar to a lot of the blue collar space. They needed to have job costs. I'm like, you guys got to track your labor and understand this. We did that for 1 year. They literally, I think they had 1% difference in revenue increase. So like they were basically flat, still at 11 million. They ended up making over $1 million extra. They literally didn't change anything in theory, except, they now had a lens on how to view the company from a finance perspective they never had. And then my random learning nugget from that was you have to market yourself on what you do and what can happen next. Because we got terms from them. And I was just like, I never thought this could happen. We gave them a 50 plus X ROI. And then, they're like, nope, we got it. We got to figure it out. All sorts of learning nuggets in that one for me.
Yeah, again, you've got to really understand it. There's so much, and I'm doing a workshop tomorrow, same thing. Like there's all this hidden money in your business and you're ignoring it, right? And we got to uncover it. Like you said, once they do that, that's what I was saying earlier. I changed their annual profit, real net profit, like from here on out.
Yeah.
They're not, this isn't a one-time hit.
Yeah, it's
That's
forever.
it's like you got that. Like they say, I got this. I did it with another client you and I know, and saying all of a sudden we teach him how to systemize. He goes into chaos. We organize it. We get it all good, get it humming, does another business, does another. Now this process can be applied to anything. Now you can go in and buy a business for 20, 30 cents on the dollar because they're a mess and turn it over. You know what I mean? Like you can fix it in a matter of a couple months and have this thing at a great profit margin. You're like, and just, you kind of add it to your empire. You can do that kind of stuff.
I'd be curious to hear your experience on systems. And to me, that's another one that I would say is kind of unsexy in the space.
Yep.
And I've had a few mentors, where they are process oriented as hell. Like it's crazy. And, if we do a lot of like personality profile scoping, I am not a systems person. And like many entrepreneurs, if we have systems, I'm probably going to break my systems. Man, did I ever eat some humble pie 1 year where we were literally just buried in the train wreck that I built by not having systems. And I mean, literally, and I hate to say wasted, but it's true. You can say learning, it's an expensive tuition payment, as I like to say. But we literally took a whole year to rebuild our systems. And I'm curious if you kind of share that same thought. I think if I could go back and do anything over again, that would be my one I would have adopted a lot earlier, is getting on the systems train.
Yeah, we preach it from the get-go, because systems is your ticket to freedom. Okay, and profitability. Okay, so it's really important, because otherwise you are, that's why I wrote Escape the Owner Prison. You are in that prison of your own making because you don't have systems. You don't have your process, and here's the struggle, Brian. Okay. So I go into an owner, let's say they're doing 10 million a year, no real systems, no process. Okay. So I can do this and this. Okay. They're like, great. I go, okay, you ready to get started? He goes, well, I'm not doing it. They don't have the bandwidth for it.
Right.
Right. So they want it, but they can't do it. They're not going to do it themselves. So I quickly adapted my system to say, right, you're not going to do it. I'm going to work with the team out here. We're going to build them out individually. That's how I'm going to do it. We're just going to come for your stamp of approval when it's done, and you'll see it. And you can fly. And now the beauty of that is, when you work with, whether it's the GM or the office manager and the production manager, and now they have this unique buy-in to the process because they help build it. Mm-hmm. Right? You actually work with them, and now you don't only have systems, you have like happier people.
Yeah. Like
because they're like, this is great. Like all their stress levels go down, their hours go down, right? The problems go down, everything fixes it. So I'm with you on there, but you just have to know where to target it and set the 30, 60, 90-day goals and get in and high accountability and get it done. That's what changes the business world.
Yeah, for sure.
As a business
and that's
owner.
what I think
I'm with you.
On the CFO side, we do numbers, but we also do systems, right? I always think it's kind of a combo. And, a lot of times we may have business coaches we're working with or helping or liaisoning with. And I'll never forget, just for me personally, at least, like I said, I felt like I just wasted that year. We were on a call with a consultant, and, lots of entrepreneurs, they're entrepreneurs for a reason, right? Like they're okay with risk, and, they just have a little different mindset than a lot of people. And we're going in describing the business, and my ops person, she's awesome. She'll probably run her company one day, I imagine. She's going in and describing the business, and, we have full permission to speak honest. I'm not perfect, right? And she goes through and she's describing it as like fire drills, chaos, unorganized. Right. And I felt like I was like dagger in my heart. Right. It was like wrong. But then, sitting back, I was like, yeah. I was like, I guess, I've always worked in client services where we have a ton of clients. So, and, I worked at public accounting where we had tight deadlines with the SEC and stuff. So that's always the world I grew up on. So I don't really think anything of it. It's just how I was used to operating. And then hearing that from someone else's perspective where you're like, having a little self-awareness, it's like, well, she's not making this up. I think she's right here. So it was, and to your point, I felt like when other people are doing it, I just always assumed like I had to be the one that built this out. And I think when we're doing it for clients, they think that. And I'm like, I don't want you messing with this. Like, you're going to be a bottleneck, right? We need to get you out of here and work with the rest of the team. And then, as you were nail on the head, at least in our experience, we see a lot more buy-in and employee satisfaction. And then, man, I think it's like buzzword now in marketing. It's like, we bring the business owner peace of mind, right? Yeah. But I mean, if you're building systems, that's ultimately what you're doing. Like you as a business owner, you no longer have that little racy mind. If you're an early riser like me, and if you ever wake up at 3:30 or 4, you can put your head back on the pillow and fall asleep. I'm a 5 a.m. riser, so I can't get up in the 4s.
You're a slacker. I'm a 4.
It's early.
It's perfect. I get things done. But no, you're absolutely right, Brian. It really is that. The systems building the process, it is critical. It sucks. Hire the help. Mm-hmm. You aren't going to do it yourself unless you're a systems guy, and if you are, I'm just going to tell you, you're probably everything else you suck at. Like you should maybe be focusing on that. So, something's going to suffer. If you're trying to jump into another lane and get things done, something's going to suffer. We have the saying, we're trying to get the owner to work on their 5%. The 5% of the things only they can do. Okay, there's a place for them. That's our goal, is to get them to that. And you get them there by jumping with the others, building out these systems and processes, the lanes, job functions, expectations, consequences, the whole package, the training, building all that stuff out is done by someone else. They need to, I use the analogy of they're the conductor of the orchestra. You're not the orchestra.
Yep.
And here's how I tell them. I say, so you go to the symphony, which I do, used to do more than I do now, but you got 93 pieces in the orchestra. 93. Okay. And guess what you don't know? Any of their names. Have no idea who they are. And you get the conductor, and I use the CSO, and back in the day with Daniel Barenboim. He comes up, it's Daniel Barenboim, he's announced, comes out, everyone claps, everyone stands up. He got this little baton, he taps it, and away we go. And you have this beautiful music that he basically takes all the credit for.
Yeah.
Okay, when he gets done, he does the bow, he points to the orchestra, does all, yes, they're great, but you need to be the conductor. They need to be skilled at what they do. And you just telling them a little louder, a little softer, a little more, a little less, right? That's your 5%.
Yeah.
But it's the 5% that drives the whole thing. So that's systems and processes to me. They know the music, they know how to play. Let's go do it. Let's make beautiful music.
And I don't want to beat a dead horse here, but you got time for a funny quote on systems? This is long, though.
Do it.
I was like, you're supposed to say yes. All right.
Yes.
So when our team was looking at you, I know you are a Marine. So this is from a Marine mentor of mine who has a place out in Colorado that are talking about processes. And I will have to probably limit a lot of this language, so I'm going to keep that in my head. We were talking about systems. He said, bro, that's great to hear. Here's an experience share of mine going from 2x to 10x. I made a list of all the stuff I needed to get off my plate. Then I started chipping away at it. Then I made a list of all the stuff I was getting off my plate, still needed a monitor, and I had full confidence the people taking that over were fully trained up. I would rather be waterboarded with F-word kerosene than to focus my time, energy, and resources on training. But the last time I failed to do that cost me over $250,000. So I have made damn sure this round to focus on who is doing what, when, where, why, and how the standard I had set. I have a written process for everything known to mankind, and I hold them to that standard. Then he basically talks about how he held them to the standard, right? Like if they don't understand it, he did not explain it well. If you screwed the standard up 2 or 3 times, that is now on you, and we have an accountability problem. It was, like I said, it's very long. And he's like, I make this like a 5th grader, right? And that dude, it was interesting how he kind of phrased stuff and got me onto the systems training a couple of years ago.
Yeah, I've done with businesses and it changes everything. Because you can build a system for everything. So you have what I call tactical and the strategic. Tactical are your daily fires. These problems that flare up, you got to run out, you got to put them out as the owner, or someone does, right? And people do it and they put them out. But what they don't do is go, okay, from a strategic standpoint, what caused that fire? Mm-hmm. Well, that was 2 weeks ago when we did this or didn't do that, and now today it's here. Oh, okay, let's build a system, let's back it up, and let's build a system to prevent that, make sure that does get done so we don't have this. So that it flares up, you put it out, done forever, doesn't flare up again. Eventually, you run out of fires.
Yep.
Because everybody in your business has been systemized, so even if you take that approach, but you have to understand it's a tactical issue, handle it, now permanent fix.
Yeah, and then another thing I like about doing that is kind of back to my world a little bit is one thing I observe a lot is, we talked about everyone, your marketing, your sales, you're fighting fires, you're doing way too much stuff. So once you get those things off your plate, another area we have that I see business owners, and I understand why it happens, but I just don't like to see it, and it's something we try to work them out of, is everyone has all their damn net worth tied up in their business, right? It's their paycheck, it's their retirement, it's their exit, it's everything. So the more, whether it's understanding numbers, creating systems, training and delegating, elevating number 2, having a leadership team, whatever it is to ultimately give you more time to think and focus, that is typically when we see people start to diversify their income stream. Like you don't want all your eggs in the basket. Lots of people never sell their business, or they think their business is worth $8 million. And it's like, no, you are 100% the bottleneck in your business. I'm going to give you $2 million for this thing.
If you're
And
lucky.
yeah, or they never sell it. And so the quicker you can get that stuff in place, and right, we kind of talked about compounding ROI over time. You know, if you look at this in 10 years and that's your exit horizon or 5 or whatever it may be, the quicker you can get chips off the table, the better off you're going to be, whether that's buying another business, you know, owning real estate, finally diverse. I think you don't make your money on business and real estate, but like we're right now, we have a decent amount of real estate. I'm starting to take chips off the table and, you know, I got to have a little in the market. Like everything, I can't access anything. Everything's tied up. You know, it's not I can push a button and get money if I ever needed it. So I think that's another important aspect around doing this stuff is because that's a risk people don't talk about enough, in my opinion. I mean, literally, these people have their whole entire life in this one thing. I mean, it's the definition of all your eggs in one basket, right?
Yeah, it's like having your personal home as your nest egg, your retirement nest egg.
Yeah.
Well, I'll sell that eventually. It'll be worth what you don't. No way, right? That doesn't work. So you're exactly right. I think, and it goes back to what I talk about a lot is Parkinson's law. Your money has to have a place to go, otherwise it's going to evaporate. So if that's the whole thing, you're making it, get it out of there, get it out of the business. Invest, right? Have it make more. You got to start small with that, but again, compound this stuff, you know. But again, if the focus isn't on it, you're not going to do it. But
And
once you set it,
it becomes a habit. You know, then
that's what I'm saying, right?
you're always doing it, right? And then all of a sudden, you look over there, you know, if it's investment portfolio or financial planner with net worth, you're like, oh man, it's starting to be a nice number.
Yep. I'll give you I got a friend of my son's. He's, what is he now? 17? Been working at like a Culver's for I don't know, a year and a half now, right?
Yep.
He's got a fully funded Roth IRA for the year. Okay. He's taken all his money, saved every tip he gets with a big envelope, you know what I mean? But he's like doing all this with it. You know, he lives at home. He's got no overhead. And like, that's a kid who's going to be okay.
Yep.
My kid's still like, you got to do this. You do that. You start now and you build the habit. You don't want to see the money.
Yeah.
I tell them as kids, you just don't want to have it go somewhere before it ever gets in your grubby little hands.
Can we talk about kids with money? I got lots of thoughts on this.
Yes.
All right.
Well, I got 6 kids and I got lots of thoughts too.
So I will say I am still learning what I think is right, but I get the benefit. I talk to a lot of clients, right? So I get, you know, I love asking people like, what do you do well with your kids? What'd you screw up on? Like, what'd you do with money, right? So I had mentioned before, my kids are 11, 8, and 6. And I learned this from a buddy of mine. We've been doing it since a very, very young age. We have the little piggy bank, and you can buy them on Amazon. I think it's 10 or 12 bucks, you know, where it's like save, invest, donate. So every dollar that goes in, right, they have that. We have Roth IRAs for all of our kids. And it's funny, my middle is probably the most money motivated. He's 8. He came in this morning. He's my early riser. He always knows I work first thing. We just had Easter yesterday, so he got some dollars and some eggs and stuff. And he's like, hey, Dad, can we log into my bank account and see how much money I have? I was like, yeah, we can. So we go in there, and he's got $710 right now. So he's pretty stoked. And, you know, I told him, I was like, my dad, they call him Dan instead of Grandpa. I don't know how we got that name, but it's stuck. So I was like, you need to talk to Dan. I was like, Dan knows a lot about investing. So, you know, we were talking about investing and all that stuff. And I just think the quicker you can get those kids to learn about money, the better. So many people make money weird and taboo. Like, my parents were poor as hell growing up. Like, my dad didn't have a bathroom until he was 80, used an outhouse. And my mom literally had no clothes. You know, you got holes in your shoes, take a cereal box, duct tape them up, voila, you got new shoes. So while I think my parents did an awesome job raising me, I definitely have a little scarcity mindset in there, you know, from them, even though my parents are first generation wealth. So the just advice out there to people and what I've observed from lots of people, the quicker you can talk to your kids about money, the better off they will be. Don't make it weird. And then another thing I've really loved outside that saving mechanism, like we have a trailer park night once a month in our subdivision. And since they've been like little, you know, like 5 and 6, it's like, here's your money, $20, go buy whatever you want. I'm not talking to anyone. I'm not helping you. And I mean, my kids are full, you know, they're not perfect by any means, but they're fully functional, right? Like they can go up and talk to a vendor. They understand, you know, like, oh, hold on. If I get an ice cream, it's $6, but I could get a soda and it's only $2. that seems like a better value, you know? So there's so many cool things you can do with kids. And we're trying to get them to understand real estate and all that. And my middle, I was talking to him the one day because he said he wants to start mowing the lawn. And I was like, dude, living in this subdivision, you should have minimum $100,000 before you go to college. And he's like, how? I was like, no one takes care of their stuff here. I was like, and you know, like I said, my parents were farmers growing up. So we like, you know, power wash the driveway every year, right? You know, restain everything. We're those type of people. I was like, you could power wash, you could trim trees, like you name it. And I'm like, and people, if you learn to hustle as a kid, you'll probably get overpaid a little bit too. So we're trying to work on all that with the kids and teach them that positive money mindset.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I did the same with my kids. Like all mine are earners.
Yeah.
Right. So now I got a 22 19s, 2 18s, and a 17. And even my 17-year-old just working, she's looking like, look, I got 3,000 in the bank. I got this, you know. My other kids say, hey, I'm 18. My 18-year, I have two 18-year-old twins. The one I looked at him, I look at his stuff, you know, and I go, dude, you just turned 18 like in March.
Yeah.
In the last 2 years, you've earned $90,000. Okay, 90 grand. Okay, like, where is it? Okay,
Yeah.
like show me you have. Okay, you got 15 grand in tools. You bought that, but I'm saying before I was 18, I was in the Marine Corps at 17.
Yeah.
Okay, so I definitely didn't make 90 grand. I don't think I made 9 grand. Okay, make any of that stuff. But I look at them like, you kids, you don't understand what you have. And then my other kids, one of my 19-year-olds wants to be financially free by the time he's 24, you know, so he's working on that. He's looking at real estate now. He's working, making this, you know, my daughter saving it, wants to get married, do this. They all have like plans. Some have no plan.
Right.
Some they just pure pleasure, but you know, but they work hard. They all get it. And when you watch all that and you kind of see, like you said, we introduced it early. I said, every dollar's a worker. Remember when Dad had all the workers, all his employees? Made a lot of money. It was really good, right? Well, every dollar's a worker. The more workers you have, the more money you can make. So treat them like a worker, you know, and that was a really good little moment where they start to get it, start saving it, and you start to see that with your kids and how they handle it. And they're still individuals.
Right.
They're still going to do what they're going to do, okay? They're not going to do everything you tell them, right? So we just kind of brought them up with that mindset, and it's interesting to see how it's panning out as they reach adulthood.
Yeah,
so
and I think
really
you hit
good
nail on head from lots of people I've talked to. Obviously, mine are younger, right? But it's you want your kids to be revenue producers, not consumers.
Yep, exactly.
And obviously, in the United States, we are taught consumption makes us happy, right? Get the watch, get a new phone every year, get the fancier car, whatever it is. And there's a time and place for that. If you got enough zeros to do it, there's no shame in spending your money. But I think the quicker you can, I've had so many conversations, and it's funny what you said where kids are going to do what they want. And I have one of our clients, they're like, you know, she said they did well or kind of did okay on the first one. And they're like, man, to be honest, the second two, they were a year apart. We felt like we were pretty the same around money. The one is so basically what you said, you know, has all this money saved, stashed away, buying real estate. And the other one, they're like, doesn't want to work, lazy, you know, and they're like, I don't know. So.
Yeah, I'm telling you, it's not, you don't have full control ever. Okay, so what did you think? From birth on up, you need to accept your limitations, okay? There's just things that don't happen. But it is awesome to see. And I think what you said, Brian, is the relationship to money. You can teach the relationship, what it is, how it's used. You know, I give them examples. Hey, remember I had all this, then I didn't have all that. And I had to get all that back. So don't do that. Don't be that person. Be who I am now, not who I was. You know, that whole thing.
Yeah, and one more comment on that relationship. Man, one of my buddies does something I think it's really cool. We have not implemented it yet, but his kids, they're a little older than mine. Just say they have an 8th grader and a 5th grader. And then I think they do it in January every year. And he said they've been doing this for years. They've been pretty good income earner, very successful guy. And he basically says, okay, we are going to live like we make, you know, a modest wage, right? And the kids are like, what does that mean? You know, and it's like, whatever it is, $1,000 a month to spend, right? I'm like, shit, we spend like $1,500 a month in groceries, I feel like. And he makes them, and I mean, they do it as a family, you know, and they're at the grocery store and it's like, man, we got to put that back. We can't eat that. And he's like, we're not crazy. We can't cancel like our gym membership or stuff like that, you know? But he's like, man, it is amazing how much awareness the kids have learned from that. So there's all sorts of cool relationship things you can do.
I explained, you've got standard of living and you got quality of living. Standard of living, you make more, you spend more. You buy the new boat, the quality of living, you buy time. Thing you could talk a lot about him, but really that increased income, like that guy you just described, he's buying quality of living. They have the time, they have the money, they have all that is going to give them the time. My kids learned that, part 2 of my life, right? Lost everything, started over. Now my focus was, how can I be around them? How can I homeschool all my kids and be around?
Yep.
Still have businesses and everything else. That became the refocus. Now they know who I am. My kids know who their dad is. We get to do stuff together. We've seen I've been around. I've been able to influence, demonstrate, whatever. It's all good because I made that decision to focus on the quality and not I lived for quality, not standard.
Right. And I had mentioned, when we talk about working wealthy as a company, a lot of that, it's not just around, like, hey, I'm trying to be rich. And one of the big ones is time. And I always say, to those who are in the working wealthy or trying to get their way up there, build freedom into your calendar, not just freedom into your bank account. I mean, one of the best things I have done ever, and I'll be honest, it's a horrible business move where we are. I'm still founder-led sales and probably will be for another year or two. We're growing and scaling at a very nice clip, happy with the business. But we built that house out in Colorado 4 years ago, and my kids would have been 7, 4, and 2 then, I think. And I mean, we more or less spend the whole summer out there. And I still work, don't get me wrong, but like I'd scale way, way back, like way back. And from a pure growth perspective, if you're just only talking finances and numbers, this is an idiotic move, like of what we're doing. But to your point, there's a lot other things in life than just chasing this, right? And I mean, I'm never going to get that time back with my kids. I hate saying out loud, I feel like I'm putting it out in the universe, but I feel like this might be our last year of being able to do it. Or maybe we have 1 year, they're starting to be really active in camps. They want, missed friends. And we'll still always go out there, but not for that like 6 or 7, we basically spend most of the summer out there. Like it's awesome. So, I mean, if you have the ability, it's what we said again, compounding interest on your business. The quicker you get things put in place, the more you can do other stuff that you may be interested in. And there's a lot of quality outside of work.
Yeah, and if you have a business, that's your economic engine. That's your freedom maker.
Mm-hmm.
You don't get that in a job.
Right.
So, but you have to make that conscious effort to create that. Otherwise, the business becomes your mistress. You're there all the time, right? It's always calling you. It always wants you there at all hours.
Got her hand out, right?
Wake it up, right? Exactly. So that's my cautionary tale to people. But it's all about your intention. Everyone goes into business for freedom and profit and all that. Most never get it.
Yep.
Okay, they end up being owned.
Out of the people you coach, I'm trying to think of our client base. At least in my opinion, people might not say it in this form or fashion, but I think most people, if they're real being honest, the goal is to build a self-sustaining business.
Right.
And I always thought of it, I started buying rent properties at a pretty young age. And then once I got a little smarter at running a business, still got a ton of stuff to learn. But, I was like, man, if you do this right, this is like a rent property on portfolio on steroids, and I'm like, and then, I mentioned the guy who taught our quarterly learning day. Man, if I started another business or bought one, I didn't know anything when I started my business. I thought I was super smart. And I feel like my ego has been beaten out of me with all the things I've learned.
Right.
But if you can build that self-sustaining business, I mean, I feel like that's nirvana out there, basically. And I don't know many people who have built one.
Right, because they like you said, they want it. They don't know how to get it. Again, they're starting with a craft, a trade, or whatever. They have the skill set, and they go do the thing that they do. Instead of doing it for someone else, they do it for themselves. So the only thing they really get is that little increase in income because they're keeping all the money.
Right.
Kind of. Right. When we come along and show them, guys like you, guys like me, and we understand now, well, what's the real goal? Okay? Like it isn't get to next Friday. and make payroll. That's not a good goal. Okay, that needs to be a non-issue. Like that should be on autopilot. You shouldn't be worried about that, right? This is part of the self-sustaining thing. Who's running what? And when they can grab onto that and you can show them the path, that's what it's about. When they see, okay, so I'm going to spend 4 weeks doing this and 6 weeks, that's what we do, right? I implement the entire calendar. Here's how, and this is where you're going to be in 12 months. See the calendar, see what we're going to do. And they're like, let's do it. And then they get there and they go, whoa, let's do this again. Okay, well, what's next? Like, how do we do, what's the next level now? This is really good. Let's do this even more. Let's free me from this even more.
Yeah, it's like, how do I become a Jedi of this, right?
Yeah, it is. I mean, and again, once the light bulb goes off and they get that, you watch things just unfold before you. And to me, that's where my greatest joy is in coaching, is in business, is their success. That kind of getting that quality of life, getting that freedom, getting the real profit, having that, that ability to do what they want to do regardless of what, without thinking about money, right? That's one of my things. Can you make a decision on something and that whether you have or do not have the money, it's irrelevant, right? Like it's not an issue. You don't think about it. It's just, do I want to do it or not do it? Do I want to go to Italy or not go to Italy?
I think that's one where and obviously we've only had one conversation before this, right? So getting to know you, but it seems like you're passionate in the small business space. And I would say why I like it so much more than corporate is I feel like what we do, I can see an impact. It's hard to see your impact when you're, a cog in the machine at Apple.
Right. Yep.
So I think it's something really cool and unique in the small business space. And then especially if you can teach someone how to build out that self-sustaining business. I mean, that
for me too, Brian, I love agility. So small business has a greater level of agility, right? They can pivot, they can turn right. You can make a difference really fast.
Yep.
Okay. I love that. You can make these changes for the better very, very quickly. And again, to see that, like this is how I look at it. I go, I'm saving families. Because how many businesses have ruined marriages? Okay, countless.
Marriage, parental, you don't have enough time to spend with your kid, business partner, especially. We have a lot of husband-wife combos and lots of family-owned businesses we see, where
brutal. It's brutal. So I literally feel like I'm saving families.
Yeah.
That's what I do, man. And all of a sudden, hey, you got into this for this. Let's do that. Now you can see every kid's game. You can see the recitals. You get to have a date night or two a week, because you're going from zero for the last 4 years. Like you're ignoring everything you're working for. No. Okay. You've ignored all of that.
Cool thing with having your own business. I don't want this to come across as judgy. It may sound like that. So I'll try to make sure I'm actually phrasing what's in my head. But we were at soccer practice recently, and I literally go to all our kids' stuff. Like, they play in club, blah, 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 super competitive. I don't know a whole lot about soccer. I was really good at basketball. And, one of the dads, he's kind of sitting there working away, right? And we were kind of chatting about that. And he almost made a comment, like, oh, as a business owner, like, you don't have to work as hard. I kind of gave him I was like, bullshit, man. And I was like, you can build the path you want, right? I was like, I know you're in corporate. You're higher up. I'm like, my sacrifices are, I quit at 5, period. Like, that is something I said I was going to do. I want to be present. My dad coached all my stuff growing up, and I want to make sure I'm around and like an act. And he's a good dad too. I'm not saying he isn't, but he's kind of using the, hey, I work for someone as an excuse. And I was like, I start working at almost 5 a.m. every day. I was like, do you do that? I was like, corporate's flexible now. You might not be able to do it quite as much as me, maybe, but you're, as a business owner, you're ultimately choosing that path. And I mean, you're choosing everything. You're choosing whether you have awesome employees or bad employees. You're choosing whether you have awesome culture or horrible culture. And like one question that always kind of got in my head from my business coach is, why are you tolerating that? And it wasn't necessarily confrontational, but I think it's interesting. Right. And then, like I said, you learn stuff at different times. I mentioned I'm a member of EO, and someone gave a presentation, and just for confidentiality, I'll kind of be loose on how I describe it, but more or less exited to PE and built a space that no one was in and was very unsexy has grown the hell out of it. Largest in the US, blah, blah, blah. And when he was kind of wrapping up, he's like, one thing I would challenge everyone in this room, and he's like, I've not figured this out yet at all. I'm still learning. But he's like, when I sat back and I reflected before I was purchased by PE, he's like, I thought my number two was just the most amazing human being ever. It was so powerful. And he's like, when I got bought by PE and I learned numbers and how to measure companies, he's like, I ran my business so piss poor and tolerated such absurd stuff. He's like, now that I've been around other players, my number two wasn't even that good. And he's like, and I was overpaying him by 50 grand a year, And he's like, and I learned this and this and this. And he's just like, I was just letting stuff go. And he's like, these guys don't. Like, you have accountability, you have metrics, and we talked about systems, and I think systems provide that. Knowing your numbers provides that, because if not, as a business owner, everyone's like ADHD brain. There's just too much stuff, and if you don't have those things in place, quite frankly, you tolerate a lot of crap. And that's why people like you, people like me, all the other great consultants, they could go out there, and if you're willing to listen and learn, make that little tweak. You just added 2%. If you're $10 million a year in revenue, it's a good chunk of change. Make that little tweak, become tax efficient. Is this person really helping your team out, or are they causing drama, right? There's so many things, myself included, that we're guilty of just, why are you tolerating this?
Yeah, those incremental little we do that. That's a big focus of how I do it. It's 3% change here, 3% change, 5% there. Yeah, you could probably do it 15%. But we're gonna shoot for 3 or 5 and watch what it does. And they compound, and you're like, dang, and then you hit 10%. We're only shooting for 3, and that was impressive.
Right.
Could you actually do the 10%? Like, they don't get it. When you break it down, those little changes, they do compound in a really, really big way. And that's why, like you said, Brian, you got to know your numbers. You got to know this stuff. You got to be able to track and have these metrics, because you can't improve what you don't track. Well, you hear that often, but really for your own peace of mind, to get that self-sustaining business, you have to have all that, because even if you're not there, how are they being held accountable? So, like, let's be real. If you're the only one walking around with a riding crop, smacking people, okay, well, as soon as you're not there, nothing's going to get done, right? The horse doesn't move. All right. So we gotta, you gotta think differently to make this stuff happen. So incredibly powerful, man, dude. We've hit some big stuff, a lot of stuff on part one.
We've jumped
on part one. Yeah, we jumped around a little bit, but it really wasn't a lot of jumping around. What came next was what needed to come next. That's how I like to think of it.
Yeah.
So wherever that was, it's all good. I think people are going to take a ton of stuff away from there. So let's talk real quick how people can follow you, get in touch with you from a fractional CFO position. If you're looking to have that, you'll take them through the whole deal. You'll do what you do. Highly recommend Brian here. I mean, guys, just if you're at that position, like you said, earlier is always better. So don't be afraid to find out if you, I don't know what the right term would be, qualify, right? But your needs may be there a lot sooner than you imagine. So at least start investigating it so you can set targets to know when you get to X number. Now you bring a guy like Brian on. How do they do that?
Yeah, so if you want to get a hold of us, I'll kind of give you a website first. So upsidecfoservices.com is our website. We have a really nice document that talks about 7 habits of working wealthy versus middle class mindset. So that's upsidecfoservices.com/7, like the number, habits. So that's a very useful piece of information, upsidecfoservices.com/7 habits. Richard, I always call social media the downfall of society. I think that was a coaching block in my head. I still think it is, but we're starting to use it for business. So I am active.
Me too.
I know, it's so awkward. Like, and I'm young enough. I'm supposed to be good at it, I guess, but.
Well, let me give one helpful tip to everyone, and you too. Okay. You can use it as long as someone else uses it. You don't have to use it at all. Hire someone to do it. That's what I've done. Like, I'm not getting sucked in this vacuum again. There's no way. Someone else can do it. They can be me.
Yeah.
No, you're really talking to me, but you may not really be talking to me.
Right.
Okay, because I'm not that guy.
Yeah. So we're active on LinkedIn. You can check me out, Brian Lang. And then I actually wish I would have done this years ago. I love to write. I feel like it helps me flush thoughts out and have some good insight from time to time. So if you follow me on LinkedIn, we have a Working Wealthy newsletter. It gets published every Wednesday. I think that's a really useful tip for small business owners. We talk about a lot of things we talked about today. It could be tax, finance, mindset, things I've learned from clients, how to teach your kids, how to not be stupid with money, lots of stuff there. So that's another area to follow us on, is LinkedIn and that Working Wealthy newsletter.
Awesome. That is fantastic. Well, Brian, this has been amazing, as I knew it would. I know people got a ton of stuff from this. Follow Brian. Check him out on LinkedIn especially. Get that newsletter. Get his 7 habits. Worst case, you're going to get some good stuff. And don't forget, after you read it, you got to take action. Otherwise, you're just reading on the crapper. Okay, so you gotta take real action on this stuff to make a difference. So again, Brian, I'm telling you, we're gonna do another episode.
Yeah, for sure.
You'll be back. We got so much more to hit, man. It has
Richard,
been
I like to talk, man. So
I know, me too. That's why I host and guest. I do both, so I can talk more. Yeah, it's awesome. But yeah, and for everybody else, we will see you on the next STS podcast.
And don't forget, revenue feeds the ego, profit feeds the family. So if you want to see how I can show you at least $100,000 in hidden annual profits in less than 3 minutes, and not only show you where, but how to create that 100K in 6 months or less without additional advertising or marketing spend, guaranteed, just go to sharpenthespearcoaching.com. See how truly simple it is. That's sharpenthespearcoaching.com. Do it now.